I am James Barfield, and this is your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Now, before I get started, I want you to hit that subscribe button, okay, and the notification button, so you'll always be in tune when we do one of these informative educational programs. Now, today's show, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a bombshell announcement on the inner workings of the Memphis Police Department. And I can tell you right now, if you're like me, if you had not heard this directly from some credible source, you would not believe it. But this report that I'm about to read to you comes from several former Memphis Police Department officers, okay? And like I said, it will knock you off your feet because it is something that you would not expect to read about any police department in America. So let's get started, okay? Now, we all know about what happened with Tyree Nichols on January the 7th. And we know what happened, but we don't know how it was allowed to happen. But after today's show, you all will know how it was allowed to happen. And after you hear this story, I'm sure you will agree with me that some heads should roll from the Memphis Police Department, starting at the top, from top to bottom. There has to be some major changes in the operations of the Memphis Police Department. Okay, so here we go. Beyond the beating, kicking, cursing, and pepper spraying, the video of Tyree Nichols' deadly arrest at the hands of young Memphis police officers is just as notable for what's missing. Any experienced supervisors showing up to stop them. That points to a dangerous confluence of trends that Memphis Police Chief acknowledged have dogged the department as the city became one of the nation's murder hotspots, a chronic shortage of officers, especially supervisors, increasing numbers of police quitting, and the struggle to bring in qualified recruits. Former Memphis police recruiter told the Associated Press of a growing desperation to fill hundreds of slots in recent years that drove the department to increase incentives and to lower its standards. Former Memphis police recruiters told the Associated Press of a growing desperation. I'm sorry, I just read that. They would allow just pretty much anybody to be a police officer because they just want these numbers, said Alvin Davis, a former lieutenant in charge of recruiting before he retired last year out of frustration. They're not ready for it. The department offered new recruits $15,000 signing bonuses and a $10,000 relocation allowance, while phasing out requirements to have either college credits, military service, or previous police work. All that's now required is 2 years of work experience, any work experience. The department also sought state waivers to hire applicants with criminal records. Can you believe that? That is in violation, I'll tell you, of the Brady-Gigolo law. And the police academy even dropped timing requirements on physical fitness drills and removed running entirely because too many people were failing running. You remember on that first video of Tyree Nichols, that one officer was completely out of breath from having run a short distance before abandoning his pursuit of Nichols? He could barely speak into the radio to speak to the dispatcher about what was going on at the scene. Remember that? That comes from running, ladies and gentlemen. So now they dropped that requirement. They dropped them from doing physical exercise to keep them in some physical shape and condition to be a police officer. I asked them, what made you want to be police? And they'll be honest. They'll tell you it's strictly about the money, David said, adding that many recruits would ask the minimum time they would actually have to serve to keep the bonus money. It's not a career for them like it was for us. It's just a job. Another former patrol officer turned recruiter who recently left the department told the AP that in addition to drawing from other law enforcement agencies and college campuses, recruits were increasingly coming from jobs at the McDonald's and the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thrus. What? Are you kidding me? I told you that this was going to be a bombshell. In one case, a stripper submitted an application, and even though she didn't get the job, it reinforced the message that anyone can get this job. You could have any type of experience and be a police officer in Memphis, Tennessee. There were red flags, said the former recruiter, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss personnel and hiring. But we're so far down the pyramid, nobody really hears the little person. Now, also, ladies and gentlemen, this also explains why that none of the complaints were ever given serious consideration by anybody in the Memphis Police Department. Had they been, this incident with Tyree Nichols could have been avoided, could have been prevented. But everybody turned a blind eye to what was happening. And it leads me to believe, now after having not been a real believer, giving the police department the benefit of the doubt, I'm now led to believe that somebody in that department knew about what these guys were doing on the streets of Memphis, and they chose to ignore it. Many young officers, before ever walking a beat with more experienced colleagues, found themselves thrust into specialized units like the now disbanded Scorpion high crime strike force involved in Nichols' arrest. Their lack of experience was shocking to veterans who said some young officers who transfer back to patrol don't even know how to write a traffic ticket or respond to a domestic call. Oh, no. I'm tempted to stop right here. I can't take any more of this. They don't know a felony from a misdemeanor, David said. They don't even know right from wrong yet. Memphis police did not respond to requests for comment about their hiring standards. I guess not. I would not either. I would be totally embarrassed to let somebody know that this was my way of running a major police department in one of our cities. The section for arrest in the agency's file for another officer, Demetrius Haley, who worked at a Shelby County Corrections Facility before joining the force, was also redacted from the state records. Haley was sued for allegedly beating an inmate there, which he denied, and the case was dismissed because papers had not been properly served. One of the officers, Emmett Martin III, 30, a former tight end on the Bethel University football team, appeared to have had at least one arrest, according to the files from the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, a state oversight agency, but the date and details of the case were blacked out. Now, if you lower standards, you can predict that you're going to have problems because we're recruiting from a human race, said Ronald Surplus, the former head of the police in Nashville and New Orleans and the Washington State Patrol. There's such a small number of people who want to do this, and an infinite infinitesimally smaller number of people we actually want doing this. Memphis, in many ways, stands as a microcosm of the myriad crises facing American police departments from Seattle to New Orleans, are struggling to fill their ranks with qualified officers amid a national movement of mounting scrutiny and calls for reform in the wake of the 2020 George Floyd killing. Boosting staff was a major goal of Memphis Police Director Carolyn Davis when she took over in June of 2021, with her department announcing it was aiming close to the size of the force a decade ago. Instead, the police ranks have dropped to 1,939 officers, like the city, majority Black. Even as the population has increased and the number of homicides topped 300 in the past 2 years. Now, a big part of the reason for the dwindling ranks is that more than 1,350 officers either resigned or retired over the past decade, more than 300 in the last 2 years alone. In an interview with the AP last week, Davis said a lack of supervisors was a particular concern, noting that 125 supervisor slots had been approved by the city, but still not filled. Are you focusing on recruitment in that area? Apparently not. Davis said the department is investigating, among other things, why a supervisor failed to respond to Nichols' arrest despite department policy that requires a ranking officer when pepper spray or a stun gun has been deployed. If that had happened, somebody could have been there to intercept what happened, Davis said. Culture eats policy for lunch in police departments, she added. If you don't have checks and balances, you will have problems. You didn't know that before January the 7th? You're the chief of police? You've had chief experience in Atlanta? You've had chief experience in South Carolina? And you didn't know that prior to January the 7th? That supervision is certainly necessary and important, especially among young, inexperienced police officers? Why would you have an elite task force that you know is designed for aggressive policing and you don't cover your bases? They may have to shoot someone. They may have to kick someone's door down. They may have to physically restrain someone, Williams said. You should have experienced people around to restrain them and keep them from going down a dark path. Longtime observers of the Memphis police say this is not the first moment of reckoning for a department with a history of civil rights abuses. After the 2015 death of Darius Stewart, a 19-year-old Black man fatally shot by a white police officer, activists and U.S. Representative Steve Cohen, a Tennessee Democrat, called on the U.S. Justice Department to conduct a pattern of practice investigation of civil rights violations in the department. Such inquiries often result in sweeping reforms, including staffing and training overhauls. Carlos Moore, an attorney for Stewart's family, warned the Justice Department at the time of a deadly trend that preceded Stewart's death. There had been over 24 suspicious killings of civilians by officers of the Memphis Police Department since 2009, he wrote in a 2015 letter obtained by the AP, and not one officer has been indicted for killing unarmed, largely Black men. The Justice Department decided not to open such an inquiry for reasons it did not explain at the time, and it declined to comment this week. The Department of Justice missed a golden opportunity to properly investigate the Memphis Police Department, Moore said in an interview. It was just as corrupt then as it is now. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a stunning, devastating report on the inner workings of the Memphis Police Department. And now you understand how the deadly killing of one Tyre Nichols could happen in the city of Memphis. Now, let me just tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen. Almost every major police department in the country is facing staffing shortages. They're having difficulties finding qualified recruits. But as this story stated, oftentimes one law enforcement agency will look at another law enforcement agency or several different law enforcement agencies and try to recruit from within their ranks. They don't go out and accept people whose only work experience is McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. They don't go out and hire people knowing full well that these people have criminal backgrounds. You don't lower your standards, because if you do, you're asking for trouble, and it's bound to happen. So this, to me, clearly says the Memphis Police Department needs an overhaul, and it needs to have some heads roll starting at the top and work its way down to the bottom. You don't have a police department. You don't have a qualified police department that you can put forth on the streets of Memphis under the guise of serve and protect. You don't have the makings of that. So you need new people, new leadership. And as many people are already calling for the resignation or the firing of this police chief, after reading this report, I have no problem joining those ranks. Heads have got to roll. Memphis deserves better, much, much better. This is not the way you run the police department. And if you continue in this way, that number of 24 suspicious deaths will keep rising. It'll keep rising. I guarantee it. You've got to change your ways, and you've got to start now. Today. You don't wait until the trial for the killers of Tyre Nichols has come and gone. You start today. You know that you have a problem, and you know that you've had a problem, but you haven't done anything about it. Time is out for that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you a bombshell, and I think you'll agree I delivered. Remember, hit that subscribe button and the notification button. Don't miss our next show. I'm out.